Hey, what is up, mortals? I welcome to part 7 season 1 of What If Midoriya was an all-for-one fan. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. So, we begin. A mass text went out to the various villains inside UA, Tactic Kill, Slaying Mantis, Pentagonist, Spectre, Gremlin and Feedback, Aka Izuku Midoriya, Togaru Kamakiri, Nito Monoma, Toru Hagakure, Minoru Minda and Kyoka Gyro. It was sent by Shigaraki or Golden Fox as the media had dubbed him. The six read the text, mentally preparing themselves for the day ahead. What they weren't prepared for was the army of media vultures gathered outside UA, asking about All Might. Little to say, they paid them no mind. After everyone had gotten seated, Vlad King went over attendance and then went to morning announcements, the first being of a trip to the USJ after lunch for rescue training alongside Class 1A. The second announcement being the class needed to choose a class rep and vice rep. The class eventually agreed to a voting system with 4 candidates giving their case to be class rep or vice rep. The candidates were Midoriya, Kendo, Shota, and Monoma. The votes were tallied, leaving Midoriya with 8, Kendo with 6, Shota with 3, and Monoma with 2. So it was decided that Midoriya would be rep and Kendo would be vice rep. Midoriya decided to eat his lunch in the classroom so he could 1. Go over everyone's dorm approval forms for Vlad and 2. Send somebody a private message on who to. As the bell rang, he'd gone through the papers, and everyone had been given the okay to live in the future 1B dorms that should be finished after the upcoming sports festival. Everyone from Class 1 and Class 1B walked onto their buses with an ever-annoying Ida shouting and hand-chopping. Midoriya didn't pay much attention during the bus ride. He was only pulled from his daydreaming when Kamakiri grabbed him by the shoulder. "How what no? I said it wasn't like that." "Oh, and what?" Midoriya smiled sheepishly as everyone on the bus stared at him confused and a little intrigued, wanting to know what he must have been daydreaming about for the usually stoic teen to just crack into a mess like that. Midoriya cursed Shigaraki internally because of what he said before that he struggles to even look at Gyro now. He had to make things awkward for Midoriya. "Hey man, you okay? You've been daydreaming and wanting to be alone all day. What's up?" Kamakiri looked to Midoriya, concerned that Midoriya was cracking under the pressure of what was coming, but the answer he got wasn't what he expected. "Ugh, just forget that. It was something Yamaki said to me about someone and it was a load of bull, but he got under my skin with it. This got a few people off his back except for Monoma, Kamakiri, and Takage." The 3 shot knowing glances at each other, smirking. "So who's the lucky girl, Izuku? Or guy I won't judge?" Midoriya growled at Monoma, getting more and more embarrassed whilst he also got annoyed beyond belief. "For the last time, me and Gyro are just friends." Midoriya's eyes widened as he realized what he'd shouted and quickly stuffed his head into his helmet to hide his embarrassed face from everyone. "Oh ho. Just wait until the Wanna girls hear about this juicy gossip." Takage giggled almost evilly at Midoriya's embarrassment, sensing an opportunity to embarrass Gyro too. This just caused Midoriya to groan inside his helmet as everyone laughed and chatted before the bus reached its stop. The USJ. Aizawa and Vlad walked up toward the Rescue Hero 13. They began murmuring amongst each other about All Might before finally starting the lesson. During 13's boring lecture on how quirks can kill, big shaka right, Midoriya spotted one of Kurogiri's warp gates along with many others that were hidden, but thanks to the infrared mode Midoriya could see the thugs' heat signatures around the USJ. Midoriya watched as Shigaraki stepped out of the main warp gate, his golden fox mask shining in the light. He was followed by a massive Namu. "Guess this is the strongest Namu that All for One spoke of." Finally, Kurogiri materialized next to Shigaraki. "I don't see him, Kurogiri. Guess All Might is running late. Wonder how many NPCs we have to kill before we can trigger the boss fight." Shigaraki laughed maniacally beneath his fox mask, locking eyes with Midoriya and the other members of Phoenix Squadron, thinking to himself, "Showtime, Izuku." Midoriya immediately shouted out, using his bottled-up rage from over the years to make it all that more realistic. As he used his claws to run along the ground at increased speeds, knocking thugs out of his way before jumping at Shigaraki, completely ignoring Aizawa and Vlad's instructions to stay back, making them have to run into combat after Midoriya. Midoriya screamed before getting sucked into a warp gate and spat out onto the boat in the flood zone, later being joined by Asui, Minta, and Yanagi. Seems Kurogiri had split up and scattered most of the classes around the USJ. Not a bad plan, Tamura. Midoriya looked over the bow of the ship, getting a full view of the area, before nodding as he formulated a plan, occasionally using his telekinesis to keep the thugs in the water from attacking the boat, even having to shatter a giant claw made of water. Slowly, Midoriya grinned inside his helmet as he watched Vlad and Aizawa fight back to back. Everyone nodded to Midoriya's plan, trusting he knew what he was doing. "Call me Tsu and you got it, Midoriya." "Ribbit. But what are we going to do?" Midoriya looked back, pointing skyward as he and Yanagi focused their telekinetic-type quirks onto the same object. combining their powers, causing the boat to lift out of the water and eventually start floating over the main plaza, distracting some of the thugs for a brief second, allowing Aizawa and Vlad to get the upper hand. They lifted the boat through the air, with them on it, taking it towards the various zones, using it to collect their various classmates. The boat grew heavier with each student coming aboard before eventually Midoriya and Yanaga's stamina gave out, causing the boat to crash into the stairs as it was on its way to drop everyone off by the exit. Midoriya climbed from the wreckage and watched as Namu smashed Aizawa's face into the ground over and over again while it stood on Vlad's back, keeping him pinned. Midoriya groaned out internally as he jumped from the boat wreckage and threw a sharp piece of metal at Namu, slicing its arm it was holding Aizawa with, by the elbow. Midoriya called out through his mask, taunting Namu, daring it to attack him. Listening to Midoriya's taunt caused Vlad to laugh a little and cough a bit of blood up. Please tell me he didn't. NGH, take that stuff off you, Vlad. Cause if he did, I am going to kill you if we make it out of this. Aizawa winced in pain as he got up, throwing the limp decapitated arm away from him and glaring daggers at Vlad King. Heh, ugh fuck. I can neither confirm nor deny these accusations. Vlad jabbed back as he punched the off-balanced Namu, knocking the giant monstrosity onto its back, screeching like wild beast in agony. The two pros turned their attention to the Namu as Midoriya floated over them. The two teachers watched in disbelief as the Namu regrew its arm, with a terrible sound of bones cracking into place as they regrew, along with the squelching of muscle tissue and flesh regenerating. Midroll, Skillshare. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. With the services Skillshare provides, you can get access to many in-depth tutorial videos on basically anything you want to learn. Each class that they have is bound to help you with your creative endeavors. Do you want to learn how to make videos like this one? Do you learn how to write scripts or edit audio? Skillshare has you covered. And with our link, you can have a 14-day free trial. So what are you waiting for? Click the link now and get 14 days worth of classes free. Link in description below. The teachers looked at each other and backed away, giving Midoriya a nod. As they did, he outstretched a hand towards the massive Namu. At this moment, All Might burst through the doors, about to shout his iconic catchphrase, "I am here," only to have a brief PTSD flash of a man in a black helm floating with one hand outstretched and the other by his side, then for it to vanish, showing Midoriya in the exact same pose. All Might watched, unable to move as his heart raced and his breathing grew uneven. The monstrosity screeched out as it burst into flames. Midoriya roared out the name of his new attack across the USJ before finally dispersing the flames with a simple swish of his hand, leaving behind a towering skeleton of the Namu that once stood there. Not a trace of blood, flesh, muscle, or gray matter remained for it to use to regenerate from. Eventually, the heavy bones collapsed to the ground with a loud thud. Looking around, Midoriya watched as Shigaraki and Kurogiri fled. Feigning exhaustion, Midoriya fell from the air, landing in Aizawa's grasp. Well, it looks like there was a boss fight, all right, just not the one I was expecting. See ya, Midoriya. Remember, I dusted your dad, now you and your mother are next. Midoriya and Aizawa growled at Shigaraki at once as he walked away, waving. What came next was of little surprise to Midoriya, but it still felt bitter. As the next day came, Izuku and Inko sat in Principal Nezu's office discussing Inko moving into UAS campus with the other teachers in a special dorm that was made for the UA teachers. However, Nezu dropped some information on his mother he wasn't expecting to come to surface, or even possibly be a thing. She used to be a hero from UA. Miss Midoriya, I'm afraid the villain Golden Fox attacked us at the USJ today, and apparently he explicitly made a threat to young Izuku here, declaring he would come for both you and your son. Inko, I'd like to offer you housing here at UA to keep you safe from that horrible man. Furthermore, as you were a graduate and former pro hero prior to your incident, I'd like to offer you a teaching job here too, so you can still make a living, if not a better one. Izuku looked at his mother in disbelief. Why did she never tell him she was a hero? How could she have been a hero with such a weak telekinetic quirk? Midoriya immediately bombarded his mother with these questions before she could even respond to Nezu. Izuku, I'm so sorry, I should have told you years ago. Yes, I was once a pro hero. I was called G-Force. As for my quirk, you should know that too. There was once a terrible villain who had the power to steal quirks. He tried to steal my telekinesis quirk back when it was almost as strong as yours is now. He almost managed to take it, but the process was incomplete, leaving me with 5% of my original quirk and him with the remaining 95%. If it wasn't for some of the heroes that I call friends, I'd likely be dead or quirkless. Midoriya lowered his head, the world vanishing in that moment. All he could see was himself and Inko. He leaned his head on her, before looking up at her, smiling whilst deep down his rage was boiling again. It looked like the League of Villains were the only ones he could trust, if even his own mother lied to him for so many years. All for one, and the others were the only family he needed. Midoriya had packed and moved all his things that he needed into the truck along with his mom's stuff. Cementos and Powerloader pushed production of the dorms forwards after the attack by the League of Villains, making them ready to move into by the next day, so most students who weren't recovering from the USJ attack spent their day off moving into the dorms. Later into the afternoon, Midoriya sat in the cafeteria eating a delicious lunch only to choke on it, as he heard a voice behind him. "Suo, it's not like what, Midoriya? Don't tell me Yamaki has put thoughts in that brain of yours," Gyro said with a teasing grin as she sat down with her tray, later joined by the rest of the Phoenix Squadron. I think we'd all like to hear how it is, Izuku." Kamakiri joined in on the teasing as Monoma just laughed with Minta at their normally vicious and sadistic villain of a leader turning into a squirming, blushing mess. When the squadron revealed themselves as villains, Midoriya was going to kill Takage personally for doing this to him. "For the last time, I see Gyro as a friend. Yamaki was just making fun of me for hugging her, so shut up please. I've been through enough crap lately. First my mom turns out to be an ex-pro, and now she's gonna start teaching here in a few days." The five sat at his table looked at Midoriya with their mouths agape. Things had turned so quickly from harmless teasing to learning that possibly the second strongest member of the League of Villains was the son of a pro hero. This could be problematic. Midoriya sat in class waiting for the others to turn up. Vlad looked at him with a slight frown and sighed, approaching Midoriya. "Hey Midoriya, I understand you may be having a bit of a hard time and all, but I wanted to tell you two things. First off, never do that again. Jumping at a villain with the intent for revenge isn't a hero's way. Secondly, thank you for saving my life from that thing." And calling Aizawa a hobo. Nothing dulls pain like a bit of humor mixed with adrenaline. Midoriya smirked and nodded at his teacher. For a pro, Vlad wasn't too bad, he guessed. Eventually, the rest of the class poured in, taking their seats, and Vlad gave the morning announcements, informing the class of the upcoming sports festival and how he expects them to train like hell so Class 1B can kick 1A's asses. So that's what Class 1B did. They trained harder than they ever had. Midoriya later snuck another anonymous suggestion in Nezu's suggestion box about the festival. The mouse bear read the familiar handwriting with a smile and quickly signed off on it, photocopying it, then sending it to each member of the faculty. They were interested to see that this year students would be going out in their hero costumes, support gear included, so the hero course could show off everything they're capable of, from looks, to gear, to quirks, to combat ability. But during the 2 weeks prep time, the other courses would be granted use of any support gear the support course had available, so they too could complement their quirks and be given top priority to level the playing field with the hero courses. The classes trained for 2 weeks to prepare for the sports festival. Midoriya had to admit this was quite possibly the most idiotic, media-grabbing song and dance he'd ever seen. Seriously, all it'd take is one villain tuning and then writing down the quirks of the next generation of heroes and how to prepare for them, and boom, they're ready for an enemy they won't be fighting for years. Dressed in his jumpsuit, gray lab coat, black metal chest plate with the claw pack attached, Midoriya also wearing his signature black helmet with its 8 red eyes along with his black metal gauntlets. He looked at Hagakure, Gyro, and Minta, each now sporting their new outfits, courtesy of Dr. Yujiko. Minta now wore a black jumpsuit with a collar that covered his face below his eyes, along with a pair of boots and gauntlets with barbs on that allowed Minta to climb walls and ceilings without falling. Minta's new outfit also sported a pair of goggles that operated similar to Midoriya's, but on a far less complicated scale, only allowing the short teen access to infrared, night vision, and zoom. Minta's gauntlets also featured retractable claws in the fingertips, improving the short villain's hand-to-hand combat. Hagakure caught the attention of many members of her class as she wore a white jumpsuit with a metal collar with 2 points poking out from the left and right, a pair of boots that had specialized soles built into them allowing her footsteps to be near silent, and a pair of gloves with a blue circle in their palms. Yet it wasn't the costume change that shocked everyone. No, it was the fact that thanks to Hagakure's collar she could enable and disable her invisibility, her hero suit also able to turn invisible with her. Gyro's new attire hadn't undergone too many cosmetic changes. As for non-cosmetic additions, Gyro seemed to have more than a few, these being 2 stun batons along with a metal pack similar to Midoriya's, but smaller and sleeker in design, with wires connecting to Gyro's new wrist and boot-mounted speakers along with her mask that covered her mouth. When the 3 teens were prompted to answer where they got the new equipment, they each answered that Midoriya got them a sponsor from overseas. With all students gathered from the first year, the classes made their way out onto the field surrounded by a cheering audience, with President Mike and Aizawa giving commentary from a box high up overlooking the whole stadium. And hosting the festival was Midnight and, oh great, Inko Midoriya, or G-Force as she was introduced. Inko wore her old hero costume. It was a dark green kimono and eye mask. Her kimono had the symbol of a hand with a spiral in its palm on the back. This was going to be a long sports festival, Midoriya thought, seeing the duo of Inko and Midnight laughing to each other. On the bright side, at least Midoriya would get to see if any of the training he'd assigned his squadron had paid off. Outro. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in all this information thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, if you're in the mood for some great storytelling, We the Celestials has got you covered. Are We the Celestials, My Hero Academia, and Naruto What If channels retell the story of their namesake anime with a twist. Check it out if you're interested. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details can be found in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, then I'd like to extend you an invitation to join the team. The only caveat being that we only accept members from 16 years and up to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. We're always looking for members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video. So thank you all for watching and have a great day.